I've had this itch for a long time. I've been wanting to make a radio app where you can browse different radio stations and just listen to whatever genre of music you want at the time. I've been thinking about it for a couple of months now. Well, longer than a couple of months, maybe even like 4 months or something like that. And since I started working at my new job a couple of months ago, I've been listening to a lot of radio, and I finally got around to creating my own radio app. So this is what it looks like. When you refresh, you get a bunch of different radio stations. You can change the genre from classical, country, dance, disco, and whatever. And when you settle on your genre, you can pick a radio station, play it, and it obviously plays the music. If you are interested into finding out how I made this and you want to maybe build it for yourself, join me and I will show you how. For this project, I use 2 different NPM modules. One is the React H5 audio player for implementing a custom audio player. The other one is the Radio Browser API, which is just a component that implements a radio browser API. There are different radio APIs, but most of them are pretty finicky to set up, and I didn't want to go through all of that on my own, so I just installed a component to do it for me. So I am starting with a new React project. I've removed pretty much all of the unnecessary things, and I've left only the app component, the app CSS or the SCSS file. If you want to do this with Sass as well, you will need to install the Node Sass module. It's really not necessary. There's not going to be a lot of complicated CSS. And they've also added an image here called Radio JPEG, which is just going to be a placeholder image for our radio images if our API doesn't get one for us. So in general, the component that we are going to use for fetching the radio stations gives you a couple of different things. One is the name of the radio station, one is their logo, and of course the resolved audio file or audio stream. Sometimes they don't have a logo or the logo can be fetched, so in that case we are going to use this as a fallback. And without further ado, let's get to creating this. I am going to add a new file here called radio.js, and this is going to be our component, and we are pretty much just going to stick everything here. I am going to import it. We are going to put it over here. I've also added a title and sort of like a subtitle or call to action message or whatever here, just so we have something in there. I'm going to import use state and use effect, because we are going to use both of them. To use the radio browser API, we need to import that as well. We are also going to import our audio player and its CSS. And I'm going to import my default image that I'm going to use for the fallback image. Let's move on to creating our JSX. So this is going to have the class name of radio, and we are going to have a container for our filters. So this is going to be our class name filters, and inside we need to put some filters. The way I've set this up is I created a new property or a new array called filters, and I've set up genres that I found that work with this API. So we need to pass in a genre or a filter, or they actually call it a tag. So we need to pass in a proper tag, and I found that all picks up everything: classical, country, dance, disco, house, jazz, pop, rap, retro, and rock pick up their respective genres, and all of these work with the API. Now, to use this, we need to map through the filters. So we're going to say filters dot map filter, and in there we are going to say pan, and inside of the span is going to be the actual filter. Now, of course, we also want to, when we click on a filter, we want to set state and let the app know, hey, this is the filter that we want to use. This is the genre that we want to use as the filter. So we need to set up our use state. And for our use state, we're going to say, we are going to track our stations. So stations and set stations are going to equal use state, and this is going to be empty. And for the filters, we are going to say station filter set station filter equals use state. And for the default, we are going to say all, which is going to fetch us radio stations regardless of the genre. Now we want to set up an on-click event, which is going to do which is just going to set up our state. So we're going to say set station filter, and it's going to be set as filter. Also, if we have clicked on the filter, we want to sort of mark it as being clicked. So we are going to set a class name depending on if the active filter equals to this filter. So we're going to say station filter equals filter. If it does, we are going to mark this as selected. And if it's not equal, we are just not going to do anything. After this, we are going to move on to setting up our stations. So stations. So this is going to be our container. In the stations container, we need to map through all of our stations, which we don't even have yet. So let's first set that up. In order to call our API, we need to set up a new function. Let's call it setup API. It's going to be an asynchronous function, which is receiving the station filter as a parameter. Inside of our new class, we need to set up our API instance. This is just some code that I've copied from the npm module. So radio browser API fetch.bind to the window, and we need to give our radio app a name, which is going to be used by the API, but don't sweat over this, just copy paste it if you like. And then to actually get our stations, we need to call the await API dot search stations. And inside we pass in a couple of things. So for the language, I am going to put English, but you can put whatever language you want. For the tag, which is our filter, we are going to set station filter. And for the limit, I am going to put 30. Now, when we have our function, we want to set up the use effect. We want to set up the use effect. For our use effect, we want to track our station filter. So when something happens to station filter, we want to call our function setup API, and we want to pass in our station filter. And then we want to take this data. We want to set stations with the data. What this does is when the station filter changes, we call the use effect, we call the setup API with our station filter, and then we set the data into the stations property here in our state. Except we also need to say return stations, because we fetched them and now we need to set them up. Now this is nothing is being shown because we need to go through them and map them out. So we should now have our stations here, and we are going to say stations. So if we have stations, we want to map them. So stations map station, and per each station we are going to return. Inside of our return statement, we are going to put a div with a class name of station and a key of our index. And inside we are going to set up another div with a class name of station name. In there we are going to set up an image tag which is going to be used for our logo. So for the class name I'm just going to put logo. For our source I am going to say station.favicon or favicon or whatever. All of the stations that we get from the API should have at least a property called favicon, and it should have a URL to the image for the logo. For the alt property I'm going to say station logo, and on error we are going to say set default source. So what is on error? On error means when we get into a situation where our API doesn't provide an image, or it does provide an image but for some reason we can't open up the image, the request returns an error. Then we can put an error here and basically tell this use the default image. So what is the set default source? Set default source is a simple function. So set default source is going to be a function which is just going to receive an event. So we are going to say event.target.source equals default image, which is our default image that we've imported here. And as you can see, we are already getting some results. So some of the radio stations that we received have their own radio image, some of them don't, and we can see that our default image is being displayed properly, which is awesome. Then right below our image we are going to have another div with a class name of name, which is going to be the radio station name, and that we can find in the station.name. So when I hit save, we should also get the radio station names. That's great. And after this, the only thing that we need is the actual audio player. So I'm going to put the audio player here. So I'm just going to call the audio player component, which we've imported, and this accepts a couple of different things. So for the class name, we can set player. For the source is the source of the file or the stream that is going to go into the player. So for the source, we say station.url resolved, which is the resolved URL of the stream or the file. And when I hit save, it should, it's already here. So there are some other things that we can do with this. We can remove the controls that we don't need from here. So we do it like this, show jump controls equals false. For the layout, you can see different layouts on the modules page, but I'm going to use stacked here. Layout stacked. Now custom progress bar section for this, I'm going to pass in an empty object. Sorry, I'm just going to pass in an empty array. Custom control section is going to have just 2 different controls, so you need to pass these strings like this. So main controls, and another one is the volume controls, and the last one is auto play after source change. We need to set this to false. If you don't set this to false, when you when you refresh your page, or when you call the API once again without refreshing the page, all of the radio stations are going to autoplay all at once, which is not a good experience. Now when I hit save, this is going to shrink a bit, or we are going to lose some of the functionalities that we had previously. And as you can see, it's a pretty bare bones audio player, but if I click play, we get some music playing, which is great. And this is pretty much all of the logic for our app. Now we just need to make this look presentable. So over here I have the app as CSS file. You can use the CSS regularly, because there are just a couple of selectors which you can change. Instead of nesting them, you can chain them. If not, if you want to use the SCSS, then feel free to install the npm sass module. And the CSS is, like I said, nothing complex. So for the app, we are going to say display flex, and we are going to align items to center, and flex direction is going to be column. For the body, I am going to set up a linear gradient, so with a purple color going to a bit less purple color, and for the fallback I set up basically the same purple color. For the text color, I'm going to set white. We can maybe lower it to not be full white. And I've chosen a font that I found on Google Fonts, which is called Architect's Daughter, and it is a cursive. Oops, it is a cursive. So Architect's Daughter, it's a sort of, I don't know, it's a cursive font. If you want to download it, this is the URL, or just go to Google Fonts and search for Architect's Daughter. Next, I'm going to add a bit of different styling for our H1 and H2. So H1 is going to have a top margin of 1 and font size is going to be 3 rem. H2 is going to have a margin bottom of 2 just so we have a bit of separation. And here we actually need to return the span, and that's why our tags were not actually showing, which I've just now noticed. So here are our tags. Okay, let's get back to the CSS. For the radio, we need to set max width to 60 m, and for the width, I'm going to say 100%. For our filters, we are going to say display flex. We're going to justify the content to center. Flex wrap is going to have a wrap, and margin bottom is going to be 2 just so we have a little bit of separation. For the font size, we are going to set 1.2 rem, and for the width, also 100%. For the span tag inside of the filter, which is the actual filters, we are going to say margin is 0.25 m. We are going to give them a little border, which is going to be 1 pixel solid, and this is a color that I found, so E36BAE, which is a pink color. Border radius is going to be 10 pixels. Padding is going to be 0.25 and 0.75 m. For the hover, I'm going to say cursor is going to be pointer, and for the background, we are going to change the background to a linear gradient, which is the same pink color used here, and an orange color. So if I refresh this, we should see the background changing, so that's great. The same way, we want our selected tag to also have the same effect, so I'm just going to copy paste this here. So when we select, let me refresh this, when we select something, we want the background to stay put. So cool. And we can see that our filter switching is also working. For the stations, we're going to say display grid. I've imagined this as being like a 3-column grid for the bigger screens and the 2-column grid for the smaller screens. You can also pull this off with Flex. I just wanted to try out grid a bit. So grid template columns is going to be repeat 3 by 33%, which just means, if you are not familiar with grid, what this basically does is this basically tells our grid to have this template, which is repeat this many times and set the width to this. So it's going to repeat 3 times for 33%, which is 99%, which is pretty much the whole width. And for the width, we are going to set 100%. For the station, we are going to say font size is going to be 1.2 m. Border is going to be 1 pixel solid, and this is just going to be just a lighter purple color, so 76, 62, 95 RGB. For the margin, we're going to have 0.25 m. For border radius, we are once again going to have 10 pixels. We are going to have a padding of 1 m. We are also going to set the display to flex. Flex direction is going to be column. We are aligning the items to center, and we are justifying content to center, so we have everything centered inside of our station containers. And it looks like this because we still need to resize our images. You can see they are all over the place. And also we are going to have a slight hover effect. So on hover, we are just going to say border color is going to be the pink color that we found. And after this, we are continuing to our station name. Station name is the container that contains the image and the actual name. So we're going to say display flex. Flex direction is going to be row. We are going to have a margin bottom of 1 m. Width is going to be 100%. We are going to align items to center, and we are going to justify content to start. Now for the name of the station, we are going to say width is going to be 100% and text align to the center. For the image, we are going to say display block. Width is going to be 2.5 m and height is going to be 2.5 m. Now, this is not going to be perfect because, like, as you've seen, the images are not of the same proportions or sizes, but I felt like I needed to do something to make them a bit more presentable. So some of them are going to be cropped, some of them are going to be a bit stretched out. I feel like you can see this one is stretched out and this one, but I feel like it doesn't matter for a prototype project. I feel like this is okay. If you wanted to create something like this with like everything looking perfect, you would need to have perfect images, like perfect image sizes. We don't have that here, so we just need to work with what we do have. For the border radius, I'm going to say 50%, so we have circles, and border is going to be 2 pixels solid, and it's also going to be the slight purple, the purplish color that I found. We are going to have a bit of margin, 0.025 m. For our audio, we are going to say width is going to be equal to 100%. Now, to style the audio container and its inner elements, we need to. There are instructions for how to do it with using Sass properties. I wasn't able to do it like that. What I did was I basically inspected the elements and I basically found the selectors for different things. So you can see they have RHAP underscore main RHAP underscore stacked, whatever. I did a little bit of styling. You can do it as well. You can leave it like this. It doesn't look too bad, but I felt like I wanted to set it up a bit further. So these are the selectors that you are going to use for the elements, for setting up these elements. So RHAP underscore container dot player, and this is going to have a background color of the purple color that I found. The display is going to be flex. We are going to justify the items to center. We are giving it a padding of 0.25 and 0.75 m, and the border radius is going to be 10 pixels. So this is basically the container. This is basically the container, so we just styled the whole container over here. The next thing is RHAP underscore stacked dot RHAP underscore controls dash section. This is going to have margin top of 0 and important because I couldn't get it to work otherwise. So what this does is it removes the margin from the play button so it can be centered nicely. We are going to have RHAP underscore controls dash section RHAP underscore volume dash controls, and we are going to say justify content to center, which is going to center the volume controls, and you can see they are centered. And now if we want to change the color, so I'm just going to copy paste both of the selectors here, and you can go ahead and set them up yourself. Can also set this up to be a bit nicer for the mobile screens. So media only screen, and max width is going to be let's say 600 pixels, which is pretty high for mobile phones. But stations is going to have grid template columns equal to repeat 2 times for the width of 50%, which means the grid is going to be 2-column grid instead of a 3-column grid. And for the image, I'm just going to say display none. So this way, if I open this up in full screen, and let's open up the responsive view. Now, if I resize this, we can see everything is resizing properly, and once I get below the 600 pixels, we lose the images and we get the 2-column grid layout instead of a 1-column grid layout. Maybe we can just go and say 1 and 100, and this should now be just 1-column layout, and it can look like something like this. Now, of course, you can play around with this, set up different layouts and everything, but for a prototype app, I think this is really cool. A couple of different things that can be added here are, for example, setting up your favorite radio stations, being able to add your own different tags, setting up a favorite tag. For example, the setting up your favorite radio stations could be resolved with using local storage. If you're not familiar with using local storage, I have a video on my channel where I use local storage to set up dark mode effect in React. You can check that out. I also go in detail about how to actually use the local storage for different things. You can use the local storage in this example to basically save an object which has a list of your own of the radio station names or URLs or pretty much everything, and you can just repopulate the list when you click on a separate tag, let's say a favorites tag or a favorites button. I think that this is a pretty nice prototype project which you can use to put in your portfolio. Like I said, there are some features that you could add to it to expand it. If you do, send me a message on Twitter or on Instagram or here in the comments below this video. I would really like to see your creations and what you can do with this. And that is all I have prepared for you for today. I hope you liked this video. If you did, make sure to check out my other videos, subscribe if you're not subscribed already, and I will see you in the next one.